Watching for when we could see a break in the heat. Potentially as we head towards this weekend, finally we'll start to see a slight breakdown in the pattern and this big heat dome. But for now, New Orleans, it's already hot, and you can tell by this camera when you see that little haze on the horizon, it just looks hot. And if you're in New Orleans, like, yeah, it feels hot too. It's close to the triple digits. We've seen more than enough triple digits in New Orleans so far this year, and we're also running at about a 23-inch rainfall deficit. And when you have these kind of temperatures and no rain in New Orleans, it gets hot. It gets soupy very quickly, and we could add even more triple-digit days to our count than we've already seen this year, which, by the way, has already been impressive. By next week, that's when we're starting to see a slight breakdown in this pattern, but it's still August in New Orleans, so we're still expecting some very hot temperatures. Everywhere that you see those bright pink colors, an excessive heat warning, where we have red, a heat advisory, have to take them both very seriously because this heat day after day building in, not cooling off that much through the overnight hours, it can be very dangerous. And many spots were approaching all-time record highs. So the hottest temperatures that we've seen on record at a few of these sites from Hattiesburg all the way to Mobile, Alabama, we're within a couple of degrees of seeing that all-time record being broken, tied. It's certainly in the conversation. And when you're talking that kind of heat, yeah, it's something you want to take seriously. Dew points 60s, 70s, approaching the 80s in many areas. That's what makes it feel so uncomfortable outside. It's not just the temperature that you see on the thermometer. You factor in that dew point, you factor in all of that moisture that's outside in the air, and it feels very sticky very fast. Take Oklahoma City for an example. You've already seen more than enough heat this week, but Alex, we're going to tack on a few more days to that. Today, for example, you're in that danger zone where our heat index 105 this afternoon, but even 2 a.m. in the morning, it still feels like the 80s.
It's rough. All due respect to girls, but she's coming back, right? She's calling again. And this one might be impactful, of course, that area to watch. What's left of Emily, that's going to continue north, as Dr. Knapp points out. That could strengthen, become a hurricane, and actually become a problem as an extratropical storm for the UK. And
then we have another area behind that we're watching. Now, there are a few factors out there that we're watching, shear being a big one, not a friend to tropical systems, and there is some out there. However,
these areas, especially a place like Phoenix, well, as we move through the second half of the week, we've got opportunities for rain coming to a place like Phoenix. In fact, flash flooding possible. It would be localized, fairly isolated through tomorrow, even Friday morning. As we make our way into Friday and Saturday, that's when we'll be watching a little better chance up into sections of, say, Colorado and Utah, even parts of Wyoming where a little better flash flood risk exists. But Phoenix, I mentioned that monsoon kind of MIA. We put up like a wanted sign for it, like, have you seen me? Because we have only seen 0.06 of an inch of rain in 2023 season to date. So very little of anything. Now, average season to date, you'd have about 1.5+ inches. 2021 season to date, over 3.25 or 3.33 inches actually. 2022 season to date had nearly 1.5 inches, and on an average monsoon season, you'd be looking at in Phoenix about 2.5 inches. So this season we have been running very low. We have seen very little. Not the case for everywhere in Arizona, but it certainly has been the case in the Phoenix area. Now, Phoenix, you've got chances coming, but you can see scattered showers and thunderstorms, truly the name of the game, and that means not everybody gets a shower or thunderstorm. So you may be the lucky spot. You may be watching, the radar and watching it all go around you. So truly a hit or miss or widely scattered nature. So Phoenix, you've certainly got chances as we finish off today into the evening. There's that remnant low working up towards the Flagstaff area. So we keep a little concentrated chance there. This is all thanks to that high pressure that is keeping other areas absolutely miserable, but it's guiding all the other systems around it. So that's why Harold's moisture is working through parts of Texas, New Mexico, and across the Four Corners region. So that will offer up at least an enhanced chance of seeing not just showers and thunderstorms, but even some heavier downpours in there. And that flash flood risk also accounts for terrain in some of these areas. Those low spots, the slot canyons, the river valleys, those are the ones that quickly fill up. Also those, dry arroyos that usually don't have water. You can see the water rushing through if you get some thunderstorms locally. So right now it is parts of New Mexico and extreme West Texas where we've seen most of the wet weather. That'll continue to move off towards the north and east, or rather north and west, into parts of Arizona here as we get into the evening hours. So you notice how that heavier rain begins to shift into central and western sections of New Mexico, eventually more concentration over into Arizona, Molly.
Thanks, Alex. Back into Weather Underground. Let's talk heat for a minute because that is the big story for so many of us in the lower 48 for the past couple of days. It will continue to be the story at least until week's end. So many excessive heat warnings everywhere that you see in hot pink, and many cases encompassing entire states. We will see a little bit of relief as we head towards the weekend, at least knocking down our temperatures a few degrees. But these are the numbers that we're dealing with in the meantime, and this is what it feels like outside, and these are the more important numbers to prepare for. Not what you see on your thermometer, what it feels like outside when you factor in the dew point and all of that moisture in the air. 113 in Des Moines, 113 for you in Kansas City, 111 in Lincoln. Some of these numbers are just eye-popping, especially when you experience it day after day. Let's talk about Topeka for an example, because you have seen at least 4 days now in the triple digits. But as I mentioned, it's more important what it feels like outside. So let's take your high temperature, 105 for today. That's already uncomfortable, right? And then you factor in a dew point close to 80 degrees. Anytime you get into the 70s, it feels truly tropical outside. When you're approaching the 80s, that's just downright gross, and in many cases unbearable to be outside. And here's what happens to your heat index. It climbs all the way to 116. So in many cases, Alex, this is just heat that is really hard to deal with day after day after day.
Absolutely. And so let's take a look at tropics. We've got so much going on, including Franklin, obviously. That's the most imminent and risky to land.
Yeah, and this area to watch up in here, it's not an Invest 90-something, it's AL07. It was Emily, and that's probably going to make a comeback. So let's talk about what those two systems are going to do and how that fits into the overall pattern in the Atlantic Basin that we've been seeing pretty much all year.
Because both are moving north.
Yeah, both are. And so what's up with that? I mean, if you have a really strong high-pressure system, it's going to steer things westward. That's not happening. And this could actually become a pretty strong, if not major, hurricane. And then Emily also headed northward, and I wouldn't rule out this becoming a hurricane. So nothing in the deep tropics, no major hurricane yet this year in the Caribbean, but both of these could become hurricanes and frankly could become a major. So this, I think, Alex, fits in with the overall pattern we've seen a lot. We've had the big hot ridge over the continental U.S. a lot this summer, and these low pressure systems coming through the northeast and out into the Atlantic. And look at where is the subtropical high? There's just no high. Remember what we talked about earlier this year, the lack of a strong subtropical high. You don't push the trade winds along as fast, and you let those waters in the deep tropical Atlantic heat up. Look at how warmer compared to average the tropical Atlantic is right now.
Yeah,
Crazy.
and even well to the north, which is why you're saying that something like Emily could make a run. We could see stronger hurricanes farther north than we would otherwise expect.
Absolutely, and Franklin will be south of the Gulf Stream for days and days, so there's plenty of fuel. So don't be shocked if we have some northern latitude systems here before we have any major hurricanes down south. And again, here goes Emily right there. Now watch what it does, Alex. Here comes one of those northeastern and Canada systems. They kind of merge, and look at what could happen in the UK.
It's like cue the double eye emoji, or we're going to be watching that into next week. That could be a pretty impactful storm should this turn out the way the models say for portions of the UK.
That's right. So it's not necessarily not a land-threatening system, maybe not as a tropical system. Now,
all right, then what else?
What about these areas to watch in the East Pacific? Do they have anything to do with what's going on in the Western Caribbean? Well, as Franklin departs, upper-level high pressure is going to dominate the entire Caribbean all the way into Central America. That's not what you usually see during an El Nino year. So El Nino is not causing the Atlantic to be hostile to development, even though it's been kind of strong winds here in the Caribbean recently. But look at all that convection. Central America out into those East Pacific areas to watch. And this is the part of the basin where the warmest waters of all are.
I mean, we've seen it earlier this week with Harold and what these storms can do when they get into that really warm water. So obviously anything getting in there is going to be worth keeping an exceptionally close eye on.
Absolutely. Now, the East Pacific system to watch could get going, but look at that area of spin that could come into the Caribbean. Low pressure at the surface, high pressure aloft. We got to watch the area close to home very carefully.
All right, so that'll be early next week. Dr. Nam, thanks so much. Our coverage continues next on the Weather Channel. Hope you'll stay